I'm sitting here at 2:43 a.m. and I honestly can't stop thinking about what Jesus just revealed to me about relationships, marriage, and who we're truly meant to be with. I thought I understood God's plan for relationships after portraying Jesus for years and studying scripture. But what he showed me about his heart for our romantic lives, about how he sees marriage, about who he has in mind for each of us, about the mistakes we make in choosing partners, it completely shattered everything I thought I knew about love and relationships. Wherever you're watching this right now, whether you're single and wondering if you'll ever find the one, married and questioning if you chose the right person, or somewhere in between, this message will revolutionize how you see God's role in your love life. Because what Jesus revealed to me about who you're truly meant to be with will either give you incredible hope about your future, or it will challenge everything you believe about how relationships are supposed to work. But here's what I need you to understand before I share what I saw. This isn't just about finding a romantic partner. This is about understanding God's heart for human relationships, his design for marriage, and his specific will for your life. And honestly, after seeing what I've seen, I realize that most of us, including me, have been approaching relationships in ways that are completely opposite to God's plan. It started 6 weeks ago when I received a message that broke my heart and wouldn't leave my mind. A woman named Sarah wrote, "Jonathan, I've been a Christian for 15 years, and I've prayed about relationships more than anything else in my life. I've asked God to bring me the right person. I've waited patiently. I've tried to be the woman he wants me to be. But I'm 34 years old, still single, and starting to wonder if God even cares about my desire for marriage. Does he really have someone for me, or am I supposed to just accept being alone forever?" That message hit me like a lightning bolt. Here was a woman who loved God, who had been faithful, who had waited and prayed and trusted, but who was beginning to lose hope that God had a plan for her love life. But you know what really shook me? Sarah continued, "I watch people around me marry the wrong people, get divorced, remarry, and seem to find happiness without ever seeking God's will. Meanwhile, I'm doing everything right according to what I've been taught about Christian relationships, but I'm still alone. I'm starting to wonder if I've misunderstood something fundamental about how God works in our romantic lives." Honestly, I read that message dozens of times, and each time it impacted me more deeply, because Sarah's struggle wasn't unique. It was the cry of millions of believers who are confused about God's will for their relationships. And that's when I knew I had to ask Jesus directly, what is your heart for our relationships? Who are we truly meant to be with? And how do we find that person according to your will? You know what's incredible about these questions? They touch the deepest longings of the human heart, the desire for love, for companionship, for someone who truly knows and accepts us. And honestly, what Jesus showed me about his role in fulfilling those desires will either transform your approach to relationships or challenge everything you've been taught about finding love. But here's where it gets bigger than just my personal curiosity. Because as I was preparing to seek God's face about relationships, I started receiving similar messages from people all over the world who were struggling with the same questions. Michael, a 28-year-old man, wrote, "I thought I had found the woman God wanted me to marry. We were both Christians. We seemed compatible. Our families approved. But the marriage fell apart after 2 years. Now I'm divorced and wondering, did I miss God's will? Or does God not really have one specific person for each of us?" Lisa, a married woman, confessed, "I love my husband, but I often wonder if I settled. We got married young, and sometimes I wonder if there was someone else out there who would have been a better match. Is it wrong to have these thoughts? Did I marry the wrong person?" David, a widower, asked, "My wife died 3 years ago after 25 years of marriage. I know she was God's choice for me. But now I'm wondering, does God have another person for me? Or was she my one and only? How do I know if it's God's will to remarry or to remain single?" Honestly, these messages revealed something that shocked me. Here were mature believers who understood theology and loved God, but who were completely confused about his will for their romantic lives. You know what struck me about every single message? These people weren't asking for relationship advice or dating tips. They were asking about God's specific will for their lives. Not how to find someone compatible, but how to find the person God has chosen for them. And that's when I realized something bigger was happening here. God wasn't just stirring my heart to understand relationships. He was preparing to reveal something about his heart for human love that would change how we approach marriage, dating, and singleness forever. Wherever you are right now, I want you to feel the weight of this question settling on your heart. Does God really have someone specific in mind for you? And if so, how do you find that person? It was a Thursday night when I finally worked up the courage to ask Jesus these questions directly. I had been carrying them in my heart for weeks, honestly uncertain about what his answer might reveal about his will for relationships. You know those moments when you realize that some questions could change your entire perspective on life depending on the answer? This was one of those moments. I was in my prayer room, surrounded by all the messages from people struggling with relationships, when I fell to my knees and cried out with desperation I'd never felt before about this topic. Jesus, I prayed, I need to understand your heart for relationships. Do you really have someone specific in mind for each person? How do we find that person? What about people who are married to the wrong person? What about people who can't find anyone? I need to know your truth about love and marriage. You know what happened next? The presence of Jesus filled my room with such warmth and love that I began weeping before he even spoke. But this wasn't just his comforting presence. This was the bridegroom himself, the one who loves the church as his bride, the one who designed marriage to reflect his love for us. Jonathan, came a voice filled with more love than I had ever heard. You have asked me about relationships, and I will show you my heart for human love. But prepare yourself. What you are about to learn will challenge everything most people believe about finding their life partner. Honestly, I thought I was prepared for his answer. But you know what? Nobody is prepared for what Jesus is about to reveal about who you're truly meant to be with. Look, Jesus commanded, and I will show you how I see relationships, marriage, and the person I have in mind for each of my children. Suddenly, it was as if I was seeing human relationships from Jesus' perspective, and what I saw made my heart overflow with both joy and sorrow. I saw Jesus looking at every single person with infinite love, knowing their deepest need for companionship and their longing to be truly known and loved. But I also saw how most people were approaching relationships in ways that were completely opposite to his design. I created human beings for relationship, Jesus explained, not just with me, but with each other. The desire for love, for marriage, for deep companionship, these desires come from me. They are not selfish or unspiritual. They reflect my own heart for intimate relationship. I was amazed as I realized that our longing for love isn't something we need to overcome. It's something God placed in us because it reflects his own nature. But, what Jesus showed me next completely revolutionized my understanding of his will for relationships. Watch how I choose the right person for each of my children, Jesus said. I saw Jesus looking at a young woman named Emma, who had been praying for years about marriage. But instead of seeing her desperation or her timeline, I saw Jesus seeing her heart, her character, her calling, and her future with perfect clarity. For Emma, Jesus explained, I have chosen a man named Daniel who is currently living in another city, growing in his relationship with me, and being prepared for the ministry they will share together. I watched as Jesus showed me Daniel, who had no idea that Emma existed, but who was being shaped by God through his own journey of faith, career development, and character formation. They are not ready for each other yet, Jesus continued. Emma needs to grow in her confidence in my love for her so she doesn't look to marriage to fill the void that only I can fill. Daniel needs to mature in his leadership and learn to love sacrificially before he can be the husband I want him to be. But you know what was incredible? I saw how Jesus was orchestrating circumstances in both of their lives to prepare them for each other and to bring them together at exactly the right time. This is how I work in relationships, Jesus explained. I don't just have someone in mind for each person. I am actively preparing both people for each other and arranging for them to meet when they are ready. I was weeping as I realized that God's involvement in our love lives is so much more personal and detailed than I had ever imagined. But the second thing Jesus showed me was even more amazing. Look at how different my choice is from what people usually choose for themselves, Jesus instructed. I saw Emma's dating history, the men she had been attracted to, the relationships she had pursued, the type of person she thought she wanted to marry, and honestly, none of them looked anything like Daniel. Emma has been attracted to men who are charming and confident on the surface, Jesus explained, but who lack the character and spiritual depth to love her the way I want her to be loved. She has been looking for someone who makes her feel excited, but I have chosen someone who will make her feel secure, valued, and cherished. I watched as Jesus showed me Daniel's character, his kindness, his integrity, his genuine love for God, his servant's heart, his commitment to growth. He wasn't the most charismatic or exciting person, but he was exactly what Emma needed for a lifetime of love and partnership. Most people choose based on attraction, chemistry, and compatibility, Jesus said, but I choose based on character, calling, and the ability to help each other become who I created them to be. But you know what Jesus showed me that will shock you about his process for bringing people together? Watch how I bring the right people together, Jesus said. I saw Jesus orchestrating what seemed like a completely random encounter. Emma was going to be at a conference she almost didn't attend. Daniel was going to be there because of a last-minute change in his work schedule. They were going to meet during a conversation about a topic that was important to both of them. It will seem like coincidence to them, Jesus explained with a smile, but I have been planning this meeting for years. I have been preparing their hearts, arranging their circumstances, and timing everything perfectly. But you know what was most beautiful? I saw how natural and comfortable their connection would be, not because of overwhelming chemistry, but because of deep compatibility that came from being designed for each other. When people meet the person I have chosen for them, Jesus explained, it often feels different than they expected. Not necessarily love at first sight, but a sense of rightness, of peace, of coming home. I was amazed as I realized that God's way of bringing people together is often much more subtle and natural than the dramatic romance we see in movies. But the fourth thing Jesus showed me was the most challenging. Look at what happens when people don't wait for my choice, Jesus said with sadness. I saw people who got tired of waiting and settled for someone who wasn't God's best for them. I watched marriages that were okay but not great, relationships that functioned but didn't flourish, couples who were compatible but not truly designed for each other. They are not miserable, Jesus explained, but they are missing the extraordinary love I had planned for them. They chose good instead of waiting for best. But I also saw something that gave me hope. I saw Jesus working, even in imperfect marriages, blessing couples who hadn't chosen his first choice and helping them build strong relationships despite not being perfectly matched. I can work with any choice people make, Jesus said, but my heart breaks when they settle for less than what I had planned for them. And honestly, what Jesus showed me next about the biggest mistakes people make in relationships will either convict you about your approach to love or give you incredible hope about your future. Now I will show you the biggest mistakes people make that prevent them from finding the person I have chosen for them, Jesus said with a tenderness that made my heart ache. Because Jonathan, most of my children are sabotaging their own love stories without even realizing it. They are looking for love in all the wrong ways, for all the wrong reasons, and they are missing the extraordinary relationships I have planned for them. You know what happened next? Jesus began revealing the specific patterns and mindsets that keep people from finding their God-ordained partner, and honestly, what he showed me convicted me about my own approach to relationships. I realized that even as someone who portrays Jesus, I had been thinking about love and marriage in ways that were completely opposite to his heart. The first mistake, Jesus explained, is that people try to find their life partner instead of becoming the person I want them to be for their life partner. I watched as Jesus showed me countless single people who were focused entirely on finding someone, rather than on their own spiritual and emotional growth. They were praying for God to bring them the right person, while remaining unchanged themselves. Look at Marcus, Jesus said, showing me a 32-year-old man who had been praying for a wife for 8 years. I saw Marcus attending singles events, trying online dating, asking friends to set him up, and constantly asking God to bring him someone. But you know what was heartbreaking? I saw that Marcus was selfish, immature, and unprepared to love someone sacrificially. Marcus is praying for a godly woman who will love him, serve him, and make him happy, Jesus explained. But he has never asked what kind of man he needs to become to deserve the woman he is asking for. I watched as Jesus showed me the woman he had in mind for Marcus, a beautiful, mature, godly woman named Rachel who was growing in her own relationship with Christ. But I also saw why they weren't ready for each other yet. Rachel needs a man who will lead her spiritually, love her sacrificially, and put her needs above his own. Jesus said, Marcus is not that man yet. He wants to receive love more than he wants to give it. But you know what was incredible? I saw Jesus working in Marcus's life through disappointments, challenges, and growth opportunities to develop the character he would need to be Rachel's husband. Every closed door, every failed relationship, every season of waiting is preparing him to be the man she needs, Jesus explained. But Marcus sees these as obstacles instead of preparation. I was convicted as I realized how often we focus on finding the right person instead of becoming the right person. But the second mistake Jesus revealed was even more common. People look for someone who makes them happy instead of someone they can serve and love, Jesus said. I watched as Jesus showed me dating profiles, conversations, and relationships where people were entirely focused on what they could get from a partner rather than what they could give. Look at Jennifer, Jesus instructed, showing me a 29-year-old woman who had been in several relationships. I saw Jennifer evaluating every man based on how he made her feel, what he could provide for her, and whether he met her list of requirements. She wanted someone tall, successful, funny, and romantic who would make her feel special and secure. Jennifer is looking for someone to complete her, Jesus explained. But I designed marriage to be two complete people, choosing to serve each other, not two incomplete people trying to find wholeness in each other. I watched as Jesus showed me the man he had chosen for Jennifer, a kind, godly man named Stephen who was shorter than she preferred, worked as a teacher rather than in business, and was more steady than exciting. Stephen would love Jennifer with the same sacrificial love that I have for the church. Jesus said, he would serve her, protect her, and help her become everything I created her to be. But she has overlooked him because he doesn't match her fantasy. But you know what broke my heart? I saw Jennifer pursuing relationships with men who were exciting but selfish, attractive but uncommitted, successful but spiritually immature. She is choosing based on feelings and external qualities, Jesus explained, but I choose based on character and the ability to love sacrificially. The third mistake was the most heartbreaking of all. People give up on my plan when my timing doesn't match their timeline, Jesus said with grief. I saw countless people who had waited for God's choice for a while, but who eventually got tired of waiting and settled for someone who wasn't his best for them. Look at David and Michelle, Jesus instructed. I watched as David, a 35-year-old man, met Michelle at church and felt pressured by his age and his family's expectations to get married. Michelle was a good woman who loved God, but she wasn't the woman Jesus had chosen for David. David's perfect match is a woman named Sarah, who is currently serving as a missionary overseas, Jesus explained. She will return to his city in 2 years, and they will meet through a ministry opportunity, but David is afraid that he is getting too old to wait. I watched as David convinced himself that Michelle was God's choice because she was available, interested, and seemed like a good fit. They got married, and while their marriage wasn't terrible, it wasn't the extraordinary love story Jesus had planned. Meanwhile, Jesus continued with sadness. Sarah will return to find that the man I had chosen for her has married someone else. She will eventually marry a good man, but both David and Sarah will miss the incredible partnership I had designed for them. I was weeping as I realized how many people settle for good instead of waiting for God's best because they don't trust his timing. But the fourth mistake Jesus revealed shocked me the most. People think I only have one person for them, and if they miss that person, they have no other options, Jesus said. Wait, Lord, I interrupted. Don't you have one specific person for each of us? Jesus smiled with such love and wisdom that I felt my heart melt. Jonathan, I am sovereign, but I also give people free will, he explained. I have a perfect plan for each person, but I also work with the choices they make. If someone misses my first choice, I have other good options for them. I watched as Jesus showed me multiple scenarios for different people's lives based on the choices they would make. For Emma, Daniel is my perfect choice, Jesus explained. But if Emma chooses to marry someone else, or if Daniel chooses differently, I have other godly men who could be good husbands for her, and other godly women who could be good wives for Daniel. But you know what Jesus told me that will give you incredible hope? My perfect plan is always the best option, Jesus said. But my grace covers every choice people make. I can bless any marriage where both people are committed to loving me and each other. The fifth mistake was the most dangerous. People look for their life partner in places and ways that are opposite to my design, Jesus said. I watched as Jesus showed me people trying to find godly spouses in ungodly environments, looking for character in people who demonstrated no character, and expecting spiritual compatibility with people who had no spiritual depth. Look at Ashley, Jesus instructed. I saw a Christian woman who was dating a man who didn't share her faith, hoping she could change him after marriage. She was attracted to his confidence and success, but ignored his lack of spiritual interest and his selfish behavior. Ashley is hoping that love will transform him, Jesus explained. But I designed marriage to be a partnership between two people who are already walking with me, not a mission field. I watched as Ashley's relationship led to heartbreak when she realized that her boyfriend had no intention of changing and that she was compromising her own faith to maintain the relationship. The person I have chosen for Ashley is a man named Jonathan, who serves in her church's youth ministry. Jesus said, "He has noticed her heart for worship and her love for children, but she has never noticed him because she is distracted by men who are less suitable but more exciting." But you know what Jesus showed me that will revolutionize how you think about finding your life partner? I want to show you my perfect process for bringing the right people together, Jesus said. I watched as Jesus revealed his step-by-step plan for how his children should approach relationships. First, Jesus explained, they must become the person I want them to be for their future spouse. Not perfect, but growing. Not complete, but whole in me. I saw people focusing on their relationship with Jesus, developing their character, healing from past wounds, and becoming emotionally and spiritually healthy before seeking a life partner. Second, they must trust my timing completely, even when it doesn't make sense to them. I watched as people chose to wait for God's best instead of settling for what was available, trusting that his timing was perfect even when they couldn't see his plan. Third, they must look for character over chemistry, spiritual depth over surface attraction, and the ability to love sacrificially over the ability to make them feel good. I saw people evaluating potential partners based on their love for God, their treatment of others, their integrity in difficult situations, and their servant's heart rather than their appearance, success, or charm. Fourth, they must be willing to love and serve their partner rather than looking for someone to make them happy. I watched as people approached relationships with a mindset of giving rather than getting, serving rather than being served, and loving sacrificially rather than conditionally. But you know what Jesus told me that will either give you incredible peace or challenge everything about your current relationship status? When people follow my process, they always find extraordinary love. Jesus promised, not perfect relationships, but partnerships that reflect my love for the church. Not marriages without challenges, but unions that grow stronger through every difficulty. Then Jesus showed me something that made my heart overflow with joy. Look at what happens when people trust my choice completely, Jesus instructed. I saw Emma and Daniel meeting at that conference exactly as Jesus had planned. I watched as their friendship developed naturally into love, as they discovered their shared calling to ministry, and as they realized they had been designed for each other. Their love story will be a testimony to, "My goodness," Jesus said with delight, not because it was easy, but because it was ordained by me. I saw their wedding, their ministry together, their children, and their legacy of love that would impact generations. This is what I have planned for everyone who trusts my choice and my timing, Jesus explained. Not identical stories, but equally beautiful partnerships. But you know what Jesus told me about people who are already married that will either encourage you or challenge you? For those who are already married, whether they chose my first choice or not, I want them to love their spouse with my love, Jesus said. I can make any marriage extraordinary if both people are committed to loving me and each other. I watched as Jesus showed me couples who hadn't been his perfect choice for each other, but who had built beautiful marriages by choosing to love sacrificially, serve faithfully, and grow together spiritually. Marriage is not just about finding the right person, Jesus explained. It is about being the right person for whoever you marry. But then Jesus told me something that will change how you pray about relationships forever. Instead of asking me to bring them someone, people should ask me to prepare them for someone, Jesus said. Instead of focusing on their timeline, they should focus on my timing. Instead of looking for someone to complete them, they should become complete in me. And honestly, what Jesus revealed next about his specific will for your love life will either fill you with hope or challenge you to completely change your approach to relationships. Now I will show you exactly how to discover who you're truly meant to be with and how to prepare for the extraordinary love story I have planned for you, Jesus said with an excitement that made my heart race. Because, Jonathan, every person watching this, whether they are single, married, divorced, or widowed, can experience my perfect will for their relationships if they understand how I work and align themselves with my process. You know what happened next? Jesus began revealing the specific, practical steps that anyone can take to find God's choice for their life partner, and honestly, what he showed me was both simpler and more challenging than anything I had ever heard about Christian dating and marriage. I mean, this wasn't just relationship advice. This was God's blueprint for finding the love he designed specifically for you. The first step, Jesus explained, is to stop looking for your life partner and start becoming the person I want you to be for your life partner. I watched as Jesus showed me what this actually looks like in practical terms. Look at Sarah again, Jesus instructed, showing me the 34-year-old woman who had been desperately praying for a husband. I saw Sarah making a radical decision to stop all dating, delete her dating apps, and spend the next year focusing entirely on her relationship with Jesus and her personal growth. But Lord, I asked, won't this make it even less likely that she'll meet someone? Jesus smiled with such wisdom that I felt foolish for questioning him. Watch what happens when Sarah stops chasing love and starts becoming love, he said. I saw Sarah diving deep into prayer, studying God's word, serving in her church, developing her gifts, healing from past wounds, and learning to find her complete identity and fulfillment in Christ alone. As Sarah becomes whole in me, Jesus explained, she becomes attractive to the right kind of man for entirely the right reasons. Mark, the man I have chosen for her, is not attracted to desperate women who need marriage to feel complete. But he will be powerfully drawn to a woman who is confident in my love, secure in her identity, and joyful in her singleness. I watched as Sarah's transformation over that year was incredible. She became more confident, more joyful, more purposeful, and more beautiful, not because she was trying to attract a man, but because she was becoming who God created her to be. This is the paradox of my kingdom, Jesus explained. When people stop needing something and start simply wanting it as a gift from me, that's when I give it to them. But you know what Jesus showed me about the specific areas where people need to grow before they're ready for his choice? There are 5 areas where most people need preparation. Jesus said, first, they must learn to love me more than they love the idea of marriage. I saw people who had made marriage an idol, who thought about finding a spouse more than they thought about serving God, who were more passionate about their dating life than their spiritual life. Until marriage becomes a desire rather than a need, a gift rather than a right, people are not ready for the person I have chosen for them, Jesus explained. Second, they must heal from past wounds and forgive past hurts. I watched as Jesus showed me people carrying bitterness from previous relationships, fear from past betrayals, and insecurity from childhood wounds into their search for love. Hurt people, Jesus said with compassion. I want to heal every wound before I bring someone their life partner so they can love from wholeness rather than from brokenness. Third, they must develop the character qualities they want in a spouse. I saw people praying for someone who was kind, patient, generous, and faithful, while they themselves were selfish, impatient, stingy, and unreliable. People attract who they are, not who they want, Jesus explained. If someone wants a godly spouse, they must become a godly person. Fourth, they must learn to hear my voice clearly. I watched as people made relationship decisions based on emotions, circumstances, and other people's opinions, rather than seeking God's will through prayer and his word. How can someone recognize my choice for them if they don't know how to recognize my voice? Jesus asked. Fifth, they must surrender their timeline to my timing. I saw people who were willing to wait for God's choice in theory, but who panicked when they reached certain ages, when their friends got married, or when they felt social pressure. My timing is always perfect, Jesus said with absolute certainty. But people must trust my timing even when it doesn't make sense to them. But you know what Jesus told me about how long this preparation process takes? It's different for every person, Jesus explained. Some people are ready quickly because they have been growing in these areas for years. Others need more time because they have more healing and growth to do. But I never waste anyone's time. Every season of preparation is necessary for the love story I have planned. The second step Jesus revealed was equally important. People must learn to recognize my voice and my leading in relationships, Jesus said. I watched as Jesus showed me the difference between his leading and human emotions in romantic situations. Look at Michael again, Jesus instructed, showing me the man who had divorced after choosing the wrong woman. I saw the moment when Michael had to choose between Jennifer, God's choice, and Ashley, his emotional choice. I watched as God tried to speak to Michael's heart about Jennifer's character, their compatibility, and their shared calling. I was speaking to Michael through his peace when he was with Jennifer, Jesus explained. He felt calm, secure, and at home with her, but he interpreted this as boredom because he expected my leading to feel more exciting. But then I saw how Michael felt with Ashley, intense attraction, emotional highs, and passionate chemistry. Michael thought the intensity of his feelings meant I was leading him to Ashley, Jesus said with sadness. But intense emotions are not the same as my peace and confirmation. You know what Jesus taught me about recognizing his choice for your life partner? My leading in relationships feels like coming home, Jesus explained. Not necessarily fireworks and butterflies, but peace, rightness, and a deep sense of compatibility and connection. I watched as Jesus showed me couple after couple who had recognized his choice for them through this sense of peace and rightness rather than through overwhelming passion. When people meet, my choice for them, Jesus continued, they often think, I could see myself with this person for the rest of my life. It feels natural, comfortable, and right. But the third step was the most challenging. People must be willing to wait for my timing, even when it requires great faith, Jesus said. I saw people who had identified God's choice for them, but who had to wait months or years for the relationship to develop because of circumstances, timing, or the other person's readiness. Look at David, the widower who asked about remarrying, Jesus instructed. I saw David, who had been married to his wife for 25 years before she died of cancer. He was now wondering if God had someone else for him or if he should remain single. I do have someone for David's second chapter, Jesus revealed, showing me a woman named Ruth who was also a widow and who lived in David's city. But you know what was incredible? I saw that neither David nor Ruth was ready for a new relationship yet. David was still grieving and healing from his loss. Ruth was caring for her elderly mother and wasn't emotionally available for dating. They will meet in 18 months at a grief support group, Jesus explained. By then, David will have processed his grief and be ready to love again. Ruth's mother will have passed away, and she will be ready for a new chapter as well. I watched as Jesus orchestrated their healing, their growth, and their eventual meeting with perfect timing. But what if David gets impatient and tries to date before then? I asked. Then he will miss the extraordinary love story I have planned for him and Ruth. Jesus replied, timing is just as important as the right person. But you know what Jesus showed me about his timing that will either give you incredible patience or challenge your current relationship decisions? I delay bringing people together for 3 reasons, Jesus explained. Either one person is not ready, the other person is not ready, or the circumstances are not ready. But when all 3 align, nothing can stop my plan from unfolding. The 4th step, Jesus revealed, was the most practical. People must look for character over chemistry and spiritual depth over surface attraction, Jesus said. I watched as Jesus showed me what to actually look for in a potential life partner. First, look for someone who loves me more than they love you, Jesus instructed. If someone loves me supremely, they will love you sacrificially. But if they love you more than me, their love will be selfish and conditional. I saw couples where both people put God first in their lives, and I watched how this created a foundation for extraordinary love and partnership. Second, look for someone who serves others joyfully, Jesus continued. How someone treats people who can do nothing for them reveals their true character. I watched as people observed potential partners interacting with servers, children, elderly people, and those in need, seeing their true hearts revealed through their service. Third, look for someone who handles conflict with grace and humility, Jesus said. Every marriage will have disagreements. The question is whether someone fights to win or fights to understand. I saw couples navigating disagreements with respect, kindness, and a genuine desire to resolve issues rather than to prove they were right. Fourth, look for someone whose life demonstrates the fruit of my Spirit, Jesus explained. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These qualities matter more than any external characteristics. But the 5th step was the most hopeful. People must trust that I am actively working to bring them together with my choice for them, Jesus said with excitement. I watched as Jesus showed me how he orchestrates meetings, creates opportunities, and arranges circumstances to bring the right people together at the right time. Look at Emma and Daniel again, Jesus instructed. I saw Jesus working in both of their lives simultaneously. He was preparing Emma's heart through her season of singleness and growth. He was developing Daniel's character through his career challenges and ministry opportunities, and he was arranging for them to meet at exactly the right moment when they were both ready. I am not passive in my children's love lives, Jesus explained with joy. I am actively working to bring about the relationships I have planned, but people must cooperate with my process rather than trying to force their own timing. But you know what Jesus told me about people who are already married that will either encourage or challenge you? For those who are married, whether they chose my first choice or not, I want them to love their spouse as I love the church, Jesus said. I watched as Jesus showed me married couples who were choosing to love sacrificially, serve faithfully, and grow together spiritually, regardless of whether their marriage had been his perfect plan originally. I can make any marriage extraordinary if both people are committed to loving me first and each other second, Jesus promised. But then Jesus gave me the most urgent message of this entire revelation. Tell people that their love story matters to me, Jesus said with passion that made me weep. Tell them that I have not forgotten their desire for love, that I am not withholding good gifts from them, and that I am actively working to bring about the relationships I have planned. But also tell them, Jesus continued, that they must trust my process, my timing, and my choice. The extraordinary love I have planned for them is worth waiting for, worth preparing for, and worth trusting me for. You know what Jesus' final message was for everyone who would hear this revelation? Stop trying to write your own love story and let me write it for you, Jesus said with love that overwhelmed my heart. My plans for your relationships are better than anything you could imagine or arrange for yourself. Wherever you are right now, single and waiting, married and wondering, divorced and hoping, or widowed and questioning, Jesus has a plan for your love life that is better than anything you could create on your own. If you're single, stop chasing love and start becoming the person God wants you to be for your future spouse. Focus on your relationship with Him, heal from past wounds, develop godly character, and trust His perfect timing. If you're married, choose to love your spouse with Christ's love, regardless of whether they were God's first choice for you. Your marriage can become extraordinary if you both commit to loving God first and each other sacrificially. If you're divorced or widowed, know that your story isn't over. God can write a beautiful second chapter if you trust His plan and His timing. The person you're truly meant to be with is either being prepared for you right now, or they're already in your life waiting for you to love them the way Christ loves the church. Trust His process, trust His timing, trust His choice. Your extraordinary love story is worth the wait.